Okay, so if there's my tailstock, it should be on center. I'll just keep slight pressure here while I rotate that wheel. The sleeve advances. It grabs that. I'm going to give it a little tap just to make sure it's well seated. Now all I'm going to do is turn my rotation on. I'm going to advance the live center until it presses into the stock and just starts spinning. And depending on the mark, I should be able to see if it's on center once it gets contact. And there's a little movement. I'll back it out. And that should make a center. Okay, so I've got my cutter lined up. The far edge of that is down the center line. So if I bring this back to zero, then I can advance it. I need to go 12.5 millimeters. And there's 40, so I'll calculate that. So 0.025 times 40, each full turn is going to be a millimeter. And I need to go 9.12. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 to the 0. 0.12. 5 should be right there. So now I'm just going to turn it on, and the outermost edge of that scribe line should be my ID. And I'm going to turn it on in reverse since I'm cutting on the opposite side. And then I'm just going to feed this in until I get a scribe line. There we go. So now I've set up my tailstock to have my drill chuck, the Morse 2 taper insert. I'm just center drilling, so I'm going to switch it back to forward so I can drill in the right direction. I'm going to turn it on just a medium speed. And this has been tightened, so all I'm going to do is feed this wheel in and spot for my actual drill bit. So that I can cut to depth. Okay, so the next thing I got to do is I've got to drill that out to depth and then a little bit for clearance to be able to cut it off. I'm using the smallest drill bit I can because of clearance issues on length, but I've got to be able to fit this boring bar in the hole that I drill. So I'm going to chuck up this drill bit, and then we'll try to fit the boring bar in, and I might have to go back with a slightly larger drill. So I set up the drill and the chuck and the tailstock, and you can see how this is all the way out to the end, and fitting this drill bit in here and this, I had to take it all the way down, slide them all in put it all back together. It definitely would have been worth getting the 7x12 or the 7x14 for the extra clearance, or to get a set of short drill bits. I now know. So this is cinched down. This is, I'm ready to advance. I can watch my graduations here. I'm making an 8mm ring. So once that outer bore registers, I can start counting the graduations here to get an 8mm depth as it comes in and out. And then I'll probably go beyond that to have some room to cut it off. So probably another 2 or 3 millimeters in addition to the 8. So I'll probably, let's just round it up to 12. So we'll go 12 depth after that shoulder engages. So speed on. Moderate. If this was steel, I'd definitely be using cutting fluid. So far with aluminum, I've been able to get away with just going slowly. So we're going to watch for those shoulders to engage. Almost there. There they go. I'm going to back it out and just read. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. 8.5 plus 12 is 20.5. So I'll start advancing and watch for 20.5. Ooh, I take that back. As that came out, I realized that's a 1/2 inch, so let me recalculate. Okay, 12mm, just under 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to go from the 1/2 inch mark up to just under the 1 inch mark. 2, 3. Yeah, I'm just at the 1/2 inch mark there. So I'm going to go out a 1/2 inch. Reset the register to where the shoulder's right there. Yeah, we're going in the right direction. And start advancing to the 1 inch. Got 3/4 of an inch, 1/4 inch to go. There's 7/8. And there's 1 inch. Okay, so I've got this tailstock off. I'm going to take off my facing tool. I'm going to set the boring bar on there. Just fits. Tighten that up with this. And we're going to have to hit this hole just perfectly, and I hope I've got the depth to do it. The very leading edge of this should be the cutter, so even if I'm a little small, that cutter should make its own way, as long as I don't hit it on the back side or the bottom side. And I don't know if I can see that angle with the camera or even with my eyes, but we'll just have to go for it and see. But like I said, the outermost diameter of this boring bar, if I set it right, should be the cutting edge. And so even that first cut, even though that first cut's going to be a little deep, it should be able to plunge in there. Okay, so I'm locking my carriage. I don't have the feed on, so I've got it set where I want. Once I lock that, this doesn't move and it gets rid of a lot of play. Right to left, I've got it where I want it. And now I've just got to advance it here. I could count off the depth, but actually I'll just hear it whenever it bottoms out, because it's got a perpendicular cutting edge there. So we'll go ahead and turn this up real high. because I'm cutting on the inner diameter, so my feed speed is going to be a lot slower than if I was cutting on the outer diameter. Focus. And start advancing there. And actually, these graduations are, yeah, it looks like it's a deep cut. I'm getting a lot of pressure here, but it doesn't seem to be rubbing anywhere else. And these graduations are such that 1 turn equals 1 millimeter. So that's actually pretty easy to count off to get to a depth of 12, or at least kind of feel where I'm at. But I'm feeding this in, you can see. Feeling a little chatter in this. That's what they say about boring bars, is that they need to be as stiff as possible. They also have to be long because they're depth plunging into something, so kind of got a trade-off. I've got a set that has different lengths, and I could probably find a shorter one. But this seems to be cutting okay, and even if it does leave a little chatter on the inside, I'm going to continue to cut deeper, and then ultimately polish all that chatter down. So I'm just going to clean it out, make sure I don't have anything really bunching up in there. Not too bad. Okay, going back in, and let's just count the depth as I resume. So right there to the edge, I'll count the turns for each millimeter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we should be botting that in a second. And in fact, that kind of sounds like that's where we're at. So maybe we're there anyways. But I'm 12 to 13 millimeters deep by my count. Pull that back off. We will, let's see, I was about 10. I'm going to take a 10 hash depth of cut. That should be 0.2 millimeters. And feed it back in. Well, that was about back to 0, so let's go from 0 down to 30 and feed it in. Counting the turns: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and back out. Show what a 15 looks like. That's 30, 25, 20, 15. Advancing in. I think my initial cut must have been about this depth. It's a lot more pressure, a lot bigger chip. Eleven, 12, 13. So 15 is probably a little bit too big, just because I don't get smooth turns here when it has that much pressure. So if I advance, that's 10 and now 5, so we'll do a 10 instead of a 15 depth of a cut. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Still kind of a herky-jerky on the rotations here, but not nearly as bad. You can see it still cuts on the back stroke, especially when there's that much pressure. And we're going to cut to the outside of that first stride line, so I'm going to just keep going here. So I've done about 5 more cuts. I'm going to show you. I'm going to put a drop or 2 of fluid in there. It all kind of slings off when it's going that fast, but a thin film still remains. And let's see, am I? Yeah. I can't really tell the difference with and without cutting fluid. So that was with fluid, but it should have wiped most of it out. I'll advance another 10, down to 25. had a real bad screen there. I think sometimes some of this gets stuck in between. So I'll do now what's called a spring pass just to show you. I'm not going to advance it any at all as far as on the radius. And I'm just going to come back here and cut again. The spring pass, meaning the depth is now the spring tension that it deflected the first time. Now that there's less against it. Actually, I did this last night. I went in and out about 10 times. And for some reason on this boring bar, I still get chips every time I do that without ever advancing it on the radius. I think it just further and further cleans up that cut. You see very little's coming off now. But 10 times in and out, and it'll keep doing that. Okay, so I'm going to shut it down. I'm approaching my scribe line, so just for, I guess, accuracy's sake, I'm going to take my caliper, and this was really giving me trouble. This Harbor Freight caliper was not holding a 0. As soon as I started to move it, it'd read like 40 millimeters. I'm going to try 0. It seems to be moving appropriately now, and I'm just going to check the ID. And I'm at 15.5 total ID, or 15.4. So I'm at 15.4. I need to go to 18.5 if I remember right. So I'm going to bring that right about in close. Lock it here. Actually, it's got to find a place on those threads. There we go. Because it locks on the non-moving thread screw that's down there. So each time I take a cut, I'm coming out, let's go in millimeters since that's how I'm measuring. 0.025 millimeters per hash, and I'm doing 10 of those. So a quarter of a millimeter, 0.250 millimeters each pass. And that's per side of the radius, so I'm doing half a millimeter with each cut. If I'm at 15.4, I can go to 18.4 in 6 more passes. So I'll do 6 more passes. That should bring me to 18.4, and then I can get that last 1/10 of a millimeter just a little bit at a time and try to get a slightly better finish. So 6 more passes, and then I'll be back. So I did 5 passes. I'm doing several spring passes now just because I want to kind of arrive at, because this is how I'll arrive at my final dimension. I want to take a measurement and just see how accurate I was in my prediction. So if I did 5 passes at a quarter of a millimeter on the radius, so half, so it should be 2.5 different, 17.9 once I measure this. Although with these spring passes, I may be a lot closer to the actual true dimension. I don't know if you can really see in there. There's a fully untouched scribe line that was just for measuring this to the outside. It scratched there. But the inner scribe line is almost completely gone, so I should be arriving at my final diameter. Doing my spring passes, and I'm still getting a little more out. And in fact, just because, well, yeah, let's do 2 more spring passes and see all this dusty stuff flying off. And actually, if I get over here and focus, you should be able to see the depth of that a lot more. I don't know if the lighting's good. 1 more spring pass. Okay. Shut this off. Flip this up. Back it out. So we're at 15.4. We should be at 17.9. With 5 passes, but with the spring pass, maybe we got a little bit more than that because we didn't do a spring pass on the initial measurement. So let's do it here where we can read it. Ooh, I'm at 18.1. That's what I've got. Let's double check that. Little wiggle to get it. So I can stretch it to 18.25. It comes back to 18.15. Let me just do the tips, see what I can get. Yeah, about 18.25. And I'm going for 18.5 if I remember right. Going for the 8 dash. Bear with me. Ooh. It might just be 0.06 of a millimeter off. It's probably good that I stopped where I did. I saw that scribe line. Let me make sure I got the right key. I'll be right back. So I was measuring the wrong one. I ended up going with the 8 2 dashes, which reads, I guess, as 8 2/3. They do less than half sizes. The 8 and the 2 dashes there that you see. And it comes out to 18.6. I was 18.25, so I got 0.35 of a millimeter to move. So I'm going to do that in graduations. I'm going to slowly kind of sneak up on it, get a better finish. And actually you can see that's much deeper than it needs to be. Well, I don't know if you can see. I keep looking back and forth to the camera. But I've got a lot of depth in there, so I've got plenty of room to cut my ring off. Actually, if I just do like this, hit a 0, and just go with the depth gauge. I'm going for an 8mm ring, so there's my 12.75. So that measurement is held true. I keep bumping up against the depth on that, and I think taking off a little bit at a time with each pass with the leading edge of the boring bar here. Got a little burr on the end of that, but it still seems to be cutting fine. I could probably touch it up or just change up boring bars. I think I've got a set of 9, but I'll finish cutting with this. So I'm going to sneak up on that 18.6 and then we'll start working down the outer diameter. So I'm thinking out loud about my measurement. It's 0.35 more diameter that I need. So 17.5 of a millimeter that I need to come back out. 17.5. And again, 0.025. So 10 of those would be 250. 5 of those would be 12.5, 6. So 7 graduations. So I'm going to probably do a 3, a 2, a 1, and a couple of halves to get to 7. And then we'll be done with the depth. And then we'll go to the outer. I'll show you that. So what I'd really like to do here is work down the outer diameter, but I can't get a feel for the ring. I want to work that down. I can't put it on a mandrel and work down the outer diameter. I can't machine on the duct tape and wooden dowel mandrel. I can polish on it, but I'm just going to have to try to estimate, and I think I'm going to try out a thin ring. For visualization's sake, I've already chamfered this edge right here. You see where the cutter is sitting against? I'm just going to bump it and take off that dicum. And I've got to cut backwards because I'm cutting on the back side of it. So I'm just going to feed that in enough to bump it. And hopefully show a little bit better layout. I thought that was on the same angle. Maybe it's not. But I'm only going to slightly chamfer that edge for visualization because I'm not to my final outside diameter, so I'm not going to do like a finished chamfer like I would. I think I'm going to cut this with the chamfer similar to the meteorite ring and see how I like wearing that. And then I'm probably going to come back. Let's come back and do an inner chamfer because I am at the final inside diameter. And I'll settle on one that I like. So, sorry about the unsteady camera there. Feed this in. We'll have to switch this to forward. And I'm going to just experiment with the depth of cut and see what I like on those chamfers. When I polish it later, I can really grind it down with rough sandpaper and get it to how I like the fit, but as far as sizing goes, I just want to kind of know. Couldn't tell if there was chips on that blade, but there was burrs, but there was just chips. So back and forward, a little focus for you. I'm going to turn it up fast. Now I'll just feed it until I start seeing chips come off at all. There they are, I hear it. So I'm right at 10 there. I was actually at 11 where it's cutting, but let's say I made contact at 10. That's what I'm going to measure on the chamfers, and that should be... Is that a 60-degree angle on a triangle? Yeah. I'd rather do a 45. I'll figure that out later, but for now, let's try a 5. I'm going to advance this. 2, 3, 4, 5. That is almost imperceptible, so I'm going to do another 5. You hear the chatter. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a little closer to what I want. I do want the, when I'm going to be doing the meteorite, I'm going to have flat surfaces. Let's start with 10 and we'll polish that out. So now I'm going to stop and think about what all I can do before I cut it off, because that's what I did too early last night and it was frustrating. The inside finish looks really good. Let me see if I can get you a close-up. I want to do as much as possible, and I think that's going to be final diameter, chamfer on both sides here. And the inside chamfer is easier because I can put the jaws on the outside of this ring once it's cut off. It's all the outer stuff that I want to be able to complete as much as possible. So I'm going to give that a think and I'll come back. Okay, so I went and set this up. This is the only parting tool I got, and it's really shitty. I wish I had about half the length. I lost the one that I ordered. And I'm going to bring that up to that line, because that's the final width of the ring. I'm not going to cut it off, but I'm going to cut a depth so that I can cut the chamfer on the one side and just give me a mark. And then this, the ring that I cut last night was 3 millimeter. It's a little thick. I'm going to go to, let's see, it's 2.9 millimeter. I'm going to go to 2.2 and try that out for a width from OD to ID. So I'm going to take that off. But first I'm going to cut this, measure a depth, so to cut the chamfer. If that one, and that one's sitting at, like, if I remember, yeah, 3.4. So that one's sitting at 3.4 right now. So I could go a millimeter deep and still have plenty of material to hold real rigidity in it. And this has a lot of chatter. It's loud as fuck. But I'm going to feed this in and show you. So I've got the left to right. Set up the camera. Next I'm going to bring it into that line. I'm going to come back a little bit until I touch up to that line. That'll do. So now a millimeter depth. We'll just start it where it started chattering. 2.5. Oh yeah, it's a full revolution. So I'm going to start slowly feeding it in. Last night I did this. I fed it in fast because it was the only thing that would keep the chatter down, and it stopped the chuck. Now I'm not trying to not waste data. I can just go slow and loud. Okay, that's from 20 to 0, then half of it. 25, that should be a millimeter depth. And I'll just check. So on 0, and if my depth gauge will go in there, there it goes. 0.93. double check that. .193, right about in there. It doesn't have to be an exact measurement. So next I will take a millimeter off the outside with a different tool. I can chamfer, I can set everything up and come back in with this same cutting tool, cut it off. Alright. So I just realized I cut a millimeter depth, but I'm going to take a millimeter off of this part, so it's going to bring it down flat. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. Well, I got to set it all back up, but I'm going to go ahead and cut a 2 millimeter deep. Double check my measurements, make sure I'm not coming too much into this. I might even just do like 0.5 millimeter or something. Anyways, I got to go deeper on this before I change tools again, and then I can take a millimeter off of this. All right. Okay, so just another 0.5 millimeter to keep it light. You can't take off not enough material, you can definitely take off too much. So I'm about 10 hash marks off. The 20 is where it should start cutting. And if you listen for it, right around... Oh, nope, it's a whole other revolution. Starting to chatter on the sides because I probably didn't line it up exactly. Started cutting on the 10 somehow, but it may have a different orientation. So can't tell if I'm pulling a chip off this. Yeah, I'm pulling a chip off the side. Nope, there's a full chip. So let's go 0.5 millimeter from there. 10, 13, so I'm going to go to 33. 33, I'm just going to let it sit on there for a second. This out. Back it out. Shut it down. Alright, well, set up for the outer diameter to take that down. Okay, I've set the machine up to gear to do a feed. And I'm going to feed it across there. Let's get real close. Okay, that's just about touching. I'll bring this back out this way and give me plenty of room. So just about touching, and then I'll just take this up a little bit to start at a 0 point. Whether or not it's going to cut, I don't know yet. We'll go on, forward. I'm going to go ahead and engage this. It should be start moving to the left. And start off real slow. And you see by the crank turning there that it is. So I'm going to turn this up. And I'm just going to be ready to disengage this lever by popping it up once we get to the... There we go. I'm going to bring this back out by 10 just so it's not touching. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to bring this back in. If I take this back to 0, that's where we're at. That's our starting. I'm going to take a measurement, see how much we need to take off, and then I'll show you a couple of passes. Okay, so now I am at the 0 mark. Nope, it got bumped. So back it off, get rid of the backlash. Go to the 0 mark. I want to do, let's try a 10 thousandths cut. So it's going to cut into here. I'll go ahead and engage it. Let's just engage it in a minute. I don't need any right to left here. And turn the speed up. And I've got the engagement here. Let me give you a focus and go. Okay, that was a 10,000. I'm going to go to a new video. It just said something about saving. Okay, we're going to go for our second pass. Let's do a deeper cut just to see what it's like. 10. Let's do 15. Remember, when we get to that to 0, is going to be our final cut. So I'll go to 25. It's adding 15th on. I'm going to quickly engage and disengage. Nope. Must have read my numbers wrong. Not sure what I did. I was at 25, there's 30. I've got no play in this thing. I may have just forgotten my numbers. Still nothing. Okay, if we go to 0 and 10, so maybe this is where my cut was, so that would make this a spring pass. Yeah, really light spring pass. So now we'll do, that was just a full revolution off whenever I backed it off. So I'll go to 25. This should be a 15,000th cut. And go. You hear it kind of bog that down. Okay, so we're at 25,000. Let me back that back down to 10. Oh, I think I know what I did. I think I bumped that last time. Come back over. Now if I take this to 25, let's just go back to a 10,000. Cut. And we'll do like a 3, 1.5/2 or something like that. Just to kind of sneak up on it. So there's a 10,000th, that's a cut. That leaves us just 0.125 millimeters off the final depth, and at 35, let's back that out some. Come back across, clear these chips. We're at 35, so let's go to 38. This is a 3 10,000th, or got right up against that shoulder. Start, stop. Okay, we're going to back off again. Bring it out. Come into, we were at 38. Let's push it almost let's push it a little past 39. I'll kind of do a 2/3, 1/3 on the rest of it. I just want to see what our finish looks like here. If I bring my nail across it, it's pretty smooth. If I put my finger across it, it feels a little rippled. Again, all that's going to come off during the polish. But I just want to know what kind of finish I can get with that. Okay, so we are almost to the 0, so 2 more passes. Speed up my cut. Engage the feed. Let's back off. Come back over, and we'll go right to 0 this time. I really like how these, even this one little bump right here, clear to 0. You're actually going to be able to see it taking material off. Okay, ready to engage. I don't know if you can see, it's leaving striations. A little line. Those are the same width as the threads on the screw down here, which makes me think with each rotation of the screw, it's moving this in and out. So what I'm going to do next is turn off the feed. I'll probably just do this off camera. I'm going to turn off the feed. I'm going to lock it to the screw. I'm going to use my cross slide to come across it and see if I can't get rid of these strays. Okay, I'm going to try to come into this. I told you about the lead screw problem where we leave those striations. I'm going to try to get rid of them with just the cross slide. I've locked this. I'm going to lock this down now. Let's see if I can get that. Okay, so that's now locked to the lead screw, which is not moving. I'm just going to go back and forth across this until I start touching. Come back to my 0 mark. That's where I finished my cut last time. Let's see if that makes any kind of contact. Try 3. Still nothing. When it's engaged on the lead screw, and let's give it another 3 or 4. It has a different depth than when it's locked to a non-moving lead screw. There's some cuts. I'm gonna take it real slow and see if I can get rid of those striations. Once again, this could come out with sanding. I'd like to do the best possible job. It seemed to take those striations off and then leave some, which makes me think we didn't get them all. I'm going to take that right up to 10. I was going to leave my ring thinner than I wanted, but I think that's okay. I had plenty of room to get rid of it. Coming back slowly on it. Now those striations, if they're from the lead screw and a feed problem, the lead screw isn't moving now. It's all on this cross slide, which has a way different setup. You see it taking off. A little bit of material. Chips flying. Also being very gentle. I've set this up and improved it a lot, but as you move this, if you really have to crank on it, it tips it back and forth, and you can definitely see those striations in it. So I'm just going to do a spring pass with really smooth motion. Oh, that looks nice. And I've noticed sometimes going from back to front makes a big difference. Alright, let's see how that feels. Bring my fingernail across that. That feels pretty smooth. I don't feel any kind of humps on that. Now we've taken it down. I took an extra 0.5 millimeter on this cutoff portion, and it's almost gone. The whole video that got deleted, it showed me measuring the depth of this. The ring I cut last night was about 3 millimeters. Oops, sorry. From inside diameter to outside diameter. I wanted to settle on 2.2. And I took this down a little extra just for a finishing pass, but it looks like we're at 2.1, which we'll try. What I'd like to do, probably have to set back up again and cut this about 0.5 millimeter deep. My cutoff portion, because I want to be able to bevel that and bevel this side. My outside diameter is finished. Once I bevel both of those sides, I'll come back in one more time with the cutoff tool, cut it off. Then I can set the outside jaws on the outside of the ring. I can start to, I can chamfer the inner sides a little bit and then start polishing the inside. I'm going to bring the outside to a final polish before I cut it off as well. Okay, so I'm taking off, I just loosened this, I'm taking off my quick change tool post. That's where I've got the slots that can go. See, these can go, it's got that little brass height adjustment knob, and then it locks in with that long handle there. But I'm going to take this off and put the one that came with it because it's the only one that can hold my cutoff tool. Let's see. So I'm going to take my cutoff tool, I'm going to cut a deeper gouge there by 0.5 millimeter or a little bit more. Let's see, my cutoff tool here, the set screws. These are the brazed on carbide tip, kind of the cheap. You can see right here, I have to make sure that's free of burrs. And just that it's not chipped away or anything, it looks pretty good. Well, it's got that rounded thing. Anyways, I'm gonna set this up. I'll need 2 hands to do it because there's a little bit of play right here. There's this spring thing that's supposed to make it 90 degrees, but it's actually off, so I have to hold it firmly in place just a little bit off of that whenever I tighten this down. Then I'll do the cutoff. Just to get a little bit deeper so I can do the bevel on the other edge. I probably could, I want to get as much down as I can possibly before I cut it off, but I could probably set the jaws to like this side, you know, and just grab it halfway and still bevel the outside. I just don't want to get that close. I want to see if I can do it while it's all on this piece of bar stock. When I set this up, I mic'd it so that it didn't have any play up or down or left or right, and you kind of just tap it with a hammer as you come around with my micrometer set up. So until I loosen those jaws, I want to get as much as possible done. I think that's better and more accurate and just more consistent to all the faces. And even though this is not a precision part, it's just giving me good practice into the machining. There's a repeat of some of the footage that I lost. I did this earlier. So I've just eyeballed it down to that little cut there. So I've got my right to left lined up. I'm going to take it in until it's just almost touching. Let me focus. Focus is a challenge here. Okay, I'm just off of touching. And I want to go to 1/2 millimeter in. So to make sure I'm touching, I'm going to set it up, turn it on. And now I'm going to bring it in until I'm just touching. There we go. You see it's just starting to throw a little bit of chips, and of course you can hear the sound. So now I can take this, and it's almost there anyways. But I can hold the cross slide still and just bring it over to 0. I want to do a 1/2 millimeter depth, I think, which would be from 0 to 20 on this dial, or 1/2 of a revolution. Yeah, 1/2 of a depth, and then I can take my parting tool off, go back and do my bevels, and then polish all of that as well as I can. And in fact, I've got 2.1 on this measurement from ID to OD. I've got 2.1. I'm going to take off like 2/3 of a millimeter just to give me a little extra play and still leave me some meat on there. So 2/3 of a millimeter would bring this, it'll be 30,000 or, 30 striations out of the 40. I'll actually be coming around to there. So here's what that looks like. Okay, and feeding in. 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 30. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Really loud process. Going to 10 to 15, there's 15. You go to 20, give it a break. Let it see those last few chips peeling off of there. Let me shut this down and make sure I've got the depth that I want. It should be, oh, that's hot. This is a very high chatter, high noise, high heat process. I think that's going to be enough for the bevel that I want. And as I cut the bevel, I can go ahead and gouge down into my cutoff piece. Think of a triangle coming in this way, cutting that bevel on this one edge, but it can also just continue to plunge. So I can cut that bevel however I want, however deep that I want. I'll come back and set up for the bevel cuts. Okay, so I've taken the ring. I took some sandpaper against some flat chisels. I did the bevels. I can barely even see the bevel on the right, but I'm hoping that's just a lighting issue. I can still touch up the bevels if I put them in the... I can grab the ring from the outside edge. But what I'm going to do now is I've got that drill bit in there just to catch the ring so I don't have to go digging for it. And I think if I go about 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters in, on the cut there, it's going to cut off. As I go in, I want to make sure I advance this tool already to be touching off, and then I put it to the left as much as I could until I was touching to the left so that I'm not going to cut into that bevel at all. And see, I'm getting a few chips there. Got it at 0, 2 full turns of this should bring me all the way in to cut it off. I'm getting a lot of rattle on that. I don't think I've seated my taper. Okay, I just stopped to tap that MT2 taper in with a hammer here. Turn it back on. Up on 40. Starting to see smoke. I'm going to back off. Actually going to get my cutting oil. Even one little drop, it slings off most of it, but I'm just going to go in really slowly. The background is 0 to 10, so I'm 1.25 millimeters depth. I think I've got a little under 2 total, and there it goes. Turn this off, bring this back. It's very light, it's still hot to the touch. Very light being the aluminum. Not much heft to it at all. I was right about that bevel though. Not much bevel to that side, which I'm going to have to correct. Which is strange because I measured them, but I might have just sanded it down inadvertently in the polishing. Put it in water there for a second. But bevel side's a little rough, just because of where my cutoff went, and I probably have a few thousandths to take down there. And then the bevel on this side is nearly non-existent somehow. And I guess I just rounded it over with the sandpaper. So I'll have to go back and manually. I think with the sandpaper I can probably add that bevel back in. But we'll just check it up and I'll show you what that looks like.